Is being a black man hard in America? If you want to raise money, you want to do business, you want to do something great, you want to make something of yourself, do you have things set against you because you're black? What I'm going to do is walk through my experience in working with clients that raise, just from the black community alone, part of our business, over $150 million. And through the process, I can walk through the ins and outs of my personal experience being black. Now let's get into it. So some people come to us, and a common thing that I hear, believe it or not, whether you're of black ethnicity or you're not, African, Chinese, Anglo-Saxon, it doesn't matter. This video is relevant for you. The craziest thing is, in our experience in dealing with hundreds of clients, we still have people that come to us and then they say that they can't get X, Y, and Z because of racism. They can't accomplish their goal, or they can't do X, Y, and Z because, they have as a struggle. And I'm going to walk through what's going on and some of the things that you can keep account of as you're working on this. So there was a client that we work with. Let's just use his first name. His name is Jay. And I asked him directly. I asked him about all the things that happened in the past with all the controversies about race and identity politics and all these things. And he's one of the most successful clients that we had. And he acquired multiple metal fabrication businesses using our systems, our training, and our support. And one thing that he said that I'll never forget is, I'm too busy to look at what's happening. I'm just focused on making money and getting the deal done. So I listened to what he said, and I looked at what he said, and I realized that he was too busy and he was too locked in the day-to-day then to worry about race and to worry about these things. But it's more complicated than that, and it's more tricky than you might think. So I'm actually a Canadian. I was born in Canada, and I'm a Canadian. So what I say is different than what a lot of people are experiencing in the United States. That being said, I do see people falling in repeatable traps and follow things that kind of keep them stuck when they're working on raising money. And whether you're black or not, this is something that may be important to deal with when you're looking at people. So really quickly, there's the biggest elephant in the room is confirmation bias, because some people assume that their company, their deal, and what they've done is great. And if people say no to them, if people say no to funding, it's because they're black. Some people have everything done well, and just because they aren't of a different group, they won't get the result that they want because they're not black. They'll compare themselves. They'll say, if I was white or if I was not black, I would get the funding because other people are getting funding for an inferior product. So there's a lot going on here, and I'm going to try to unpack it. So the first thing is, it's really hard to read somebody's mind and to know why people behave a certain way they behave. Some people are racist, some people are not racist. I'd like to assume that most people, the vast majority of people, are not racist, at least consciously. And sometimes people, because there was a client that I was working with, somebody saw his deal and they said, hey, this deal is pretty, I actually saw the deal and I saw his business plan and I saw everything, and I actually wasn't impressed. It was one of the worst business plans I've seen in a while. And the person went ahead and was using the race card to blame race. So there are other people I've worked with, though, that were about to become clients, and I've seen their litigation because we do research on everybody that approaches us, and we saw through litigation that they've sued people for racism, past employers for racism and acts of racism, and I believe they won their cases. So so it starts making a video where today everything is really like the algorithm wants me to pick a side, quote unquote, but the reality is there's no side to pick. The only side I'm going to pick is your side, the person who's watching this video, to tell you the truth. And the reality is that it's a bit mixed, because what ends up happening is people do experience these things, but most of the time these things, whether they exist, like assume that the racism does exist, but it doesn't help you to realize it exists in many cases, because unless you are working in some sort of government office and you're able to change the mind of everybody in 1 second, it doesn't really help you to obsess about things that you don't have control over unless you bleach your skin or go to a different country. So unless you take specific action in changing the how people think about you, you can't really complain about it, because you just have to focus on taking action. And if you think about people being racist against you when you're working on growing your business or raising money, then it doesn't really help you unless you remain positive through it. And it's really hard to stay positive if you stay negative, because if you think that people that reach out to you are going to be racist before you even reach out to them, you're going to have you're not going to be fully present in the moment, and you're not going to look at people for who they are, and you're not going to look at the deal's criteria for what it is, and you're not going to look at the merit of the deal for what it is, and you're not going to look for your skills for what they are, and you will be distracted by another thing that's going to prevent you from focusing on the main thing, which is how much money investors are going to make from your deal, and how are you going to build relationship with investors. So sometimes if you focus on the things that prevents you from getting the result that you want, you'll be focused and preoccupied with something that detracts from the main thing. And you may get way more outsized returns by focusing on the main thing, that being how much money you're going to make your investors, than what people think about you because you're not their race or you look different. So if you focus on the main thing, then you'll have an outsized return anyway. And rather than seeing it as a reason why you can't get what you want, for example, funding for your company, you can think about it being something that you can get because you can say, okay, if you have all these things against you, you might as well work 10 times harder to get the result that you want. So there's very little benefit in telling yourself a story that because people are racist against you, you're going to lose. You just say, oh, I'm grateful that a few people may or may not be racist to me, because then I'll be incentivized to work harder and to do better and to be bigger than I otherwise would have been, because I have less of an excuse to slack off if you do believe in that. And then you can take advantage of, I guess, quote unquote, the merit-based, movement that's coming on right now. And you can also look, this is something very few people do, you can also look at uniting with people who do look like you. So this is like the DEI argument where, people say that, hey, they give all these bonuses to people who don't deserve it. Or, hey, there are all these communities and programs that are out there. A few years ago, you could have really taken advantage of those programs. Now that they're shutting down, there are communities of people. For example, if you're an African-American investor, link up with an African-American investor, because the conversion rate may be higher. So you may be able to carve out a niche for yourself, if you think that, because really for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. If you think people don't like you for how you look, then there are people that do like you for how you look. So there's always a way around it. And you can carve out a unique niche so you can have dominance and mastery amongst a different group of people, while also working on just having a good deal and working with the people that you work with. The caveat to all these things I'm saying is, no, I don't, like, my grandfather wasn't great-grandfather wasn't a slave in the United States, and I can't understand all the things that you're psychologically going through. And yes, I understand that times are politically, inflammatory, and people shouldn't be a victim. Both those things can coexist. I had a client, Washington, D.C., cybersecurity guy, really intelligent, and he always said the argument that, this is back during the George Floyd thing, that people shouldn't be a victim. That I have every opportunity here in the United States to make millions, and he made millions, and he acquired businesses for millions, and he successfully, this was one of our clients, and he did this for millions. So there's very little excuse to limit yourself and then to say that, hey, you can't make it if you take the actions that you need to take to get the results. And you focus on what you can't control instead of what you can't control. And you don't have confirmation bias to assume that people are going to be against you before you confirm that people are against you without empirical proof. And you focus on the things that are going to get you more handshakes in the room, as opposed to things that'll get you less handshakes in the room. It's almost like if somebody's dating a woman or dating a guy, or depending on who's dating who, if you assume that if let's say she's late for the second date or something, if you assume she's late because she doesn't like you, then you've already put yourself on the back foot. Adopting beliefs that don't serve you will be the bottleneck that prevents you from getting the best out of people. So you can't really assume that people are racist unless you have proof, because proof can validate something that you assume. But if you just assume things without proof, then you're not being rational. So that's pretty much all I got to say. And, ultimately just focus on what you can control. Focus on using things that you think that are preventing you from getting what you want to be more of a motivator, to say that you have to increase your outputs to fix the thing that's preventing you from getting what you want. And ultimately, if you believe that something is really preventing you from getting what you want, then you have to take the actions to fix it. And if you can't take the actions to fix it, and then there's no use complaining about something that you can't change, unless you change, or you literally just either go to a different country or you change how you look. There's a time and place to vent, but there's also a time and place to take action, which is how people are looking to get money from the deal that you bring to them. So with this was a little bit of a controversial take, but I think it's important because for whatever reason, nearly half of the clients who come to us are either Black or African American. And with this, I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and make sure you work hard, work on raising money properly. If this is something that you'd like to do, make sure you head to raises.com to learn more.